Hi, welcome back to the Potsmoker's Bible. My name is Zion. I'm the author of the Potsmoker's Bible, which contains the prophetic book of Zion from the Ketuvim or Old Testament. Today, we are talking the third part of the general reading of the 19th chapter of the Potsmoker's Bible and the 16th chapter of the book of Zion. It's called And Those That Hate Me. Last time, I left you with a bit of a mystery. What corporation was responsible for the creation of the prohibition against marijuana, and why? So, would you like to know? Of course you do. Dow Chemical. In 1935, Dow Chemical introduced a new type of product called plastic. They produced these products using chemical resins instead of natural materials. This new form of product, however, was expensive to make. Hemp was used by society in the same capacity, but was far cheaper to produce. If Dow was to thrive on plastic, hemp had to go. So, Dow's lobbyists lobbied the government to ban hemp. And this is how they did it. The lobbyists for Dow learned that the state of Texas senator was concerned with the immigrants from Mexico who just happened to smoke marijuana, which looked exactly like hemp. And they brought it from Mexico. Now, they looked around and found out that the senator from Louisiana, meanwhile, was concerned with the blacks who played this new form of jazz music and smoked marijuana, which, by the way, had been introduced to them and was supplied to them by the Mexicans. So, he got these two guys together, and together they hatched out a plan, which they took to Harry J. Anslinger, who was a member of the government in charge of, what else? Drugs. Anslinger took up the cause and used the power of his government position to create a propaganda campaign using the media to create a public panic in order to pass laws prohibiting marijuana's use and sale. Hemp was banned simply because it looked just like marijuana, so it was far easier to ban it instead of to provide the means for its legal use. The ban of hemp is ridiculous. Dow Chemical took over the hemp-based products with great profit. That is why hemp was banned, to benefit Dow Chemical. And in order to ban hemp, marijuana was banned to benefit Texas and Louisiana. So, from 1939 to 1945, Dow Chemical's net value increased 11-fold. I believe that it is from this plastics that it increased. It went from $11,229,159.45 in 1939 to a whopping $124,570,200 in 1945. So, the ban on hemp gave Dow Chemical the means to sell their plastic-based chemicals. If hemp had never been banned, Dow would never have profited from the plastics because hemp had already been being used cheaper to do the same thing. Dow profited from the ban of hemp. The ban of hemp did more than just profit Dow. It led to the way that we use chemicals in place of natural resources today. Plastic introduced a new form of manufacturing, which has led us to our current state of affairs. It wasn't the plastic itself that was the problem, it was the chemicals that polluted the atmosphere that created our problem. And it was the corporate methods that profit was to be put above all else that Dow led the way to the replacement of nature as a resource and profit above life. The lobbyists of Dow used the racist tendencies of the Southern politicians to create their plastic world. The prejudices of the white male ego is at the heart of the war on drugs. The prohibition of marijuana was the result of the prejudices of Texas against Mexicans and the prejudices of Louisiana against blacks. The prohibition of marijuana created a law that allowed Texas to deport Mexicans, and it allowed Louisiana to imprison blacks, who were known to use marijuana in conjunction with jazz music. This prohibition was created along the lines of the 20s laws against alcohol, a holy crusade to save America from the menace of drug use. Big money bought the laws that oppress us, but it was the profits of the government that gained by such laws that no doubt swayed the government to reenact a failed policy of the 20s. Our corporate plastic society was created by Dow Chemical. In order for the war on drugs to have ever been for the public good, it should have been evident prior to its enactment. There should have been an overwhelming need for such restrictions. Where are the facts and figures that prove the harm inflicted on society by the people who use drugs? What harm does drug use cause to society? Prior to 1939, when such laws were enacted, there is no evidence of marijuana being a factor in violent acts of criminal behavior, neither prior to 1939 nor after 1939. At no point is there evidence of a direct link between marijuana use and violent behavior. All violence associated with marijuana is a direct result of the prohibition against it. All of the violence can be argued comes from the pressure placed on my people by the state. This violence is not because of the drug use, but because of the state's prohibition of it. The violence, for the most part, is perpetuated not by the drug user, but by the police against them. All you have to do is watch an episode of Cops to have it in your face. You, as a society, glorify the torture and brutality visited upon my people. It's not just black lives that matter. Drug-using cyanide lives matter also. The violence of the police state is clearly evident. It is not just the violence that is wrong. It is the entire police state and media coverage of it that is to blame. The war on drugs persecutes not the user of the drugs, but the businessman providing the commodity. That he is the one that is imprisoned. The salesman goes to jail. It's not doing drugs that is punished. It's the business of selling drugs that is the basis of the war. This is an economic war, not a moral one. And that is ridiculous, because this is an open market society. The state doesn't have the right to restrict the trade of the American public. In a free enterprise system, it is, which is the founding principle of the American democracy, that postulates that the economy should not be bound by laws of the state, but that it should be allowed to use consumer indicators to operate. Commodities should be dictated not by the state, but by public demand. In other words, the state doesn't choose what the consumer wants. So, it's unlawful for the state to determine saleable commodities. The prohibition of marijuana By what right does the state impose its will on the market? In our economic system, the market alone indicates what is bought and sold, supply and demand. As long as there is something to sell, supply, that the consumer wants, it can be sold. However, it is the will of the consumer that ultimately decides what is actually marketable. If the public wants it, it will sell. Sorry, state, but people want drugs. Suppliers want to sell drugs. Whether or not the market is stocked backed or black, the consumer always dictates the economy of this and any other country. The funny thing is, drugs were at the best a non-issue prior to 1939. I have tried to find evidence of drug abuse prior to 39, and I couldn't find any, so drug abuse wasn't a thing. Neither was the sale of drugs. It just didn't exist. No one knew how many drugs were used or sold prior to 1939. Outside of course, the Opium Wars. Totally different thing, okay? I'm going to stop there for today. So, we will take up tomorrow where we have left off today. And may the gray watch over you, guide you, and keep you from all harm. May you always be worthy of them. May your thoughts, words, and deeds reflect truth, good, and light. May you always be happy and high. Know that I love you. Later. I'll never say goodbye.